want to take a few seconds at the beginning of this video to let you know that gun channels are rowing upstream against the Google algorithm. And then you throw God into the equation, it's really a tough situation to be in. So please consider supporting this channel through Patreon. That link is below. And I want to take a moment and thank those of you who have and are supporting this channel. We could not have done what we have done over the last several years without you. Thank you. Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to see what it is we could expect to happen in the end times. And where we are in this book of Revelation is we've hit chapter 17 and we're nearing the end of chapter 17. And we've spent many episodes talking about the beast and the harlot that rides the beast. Now, like many episodes in the past, I've said in the beginnings, is that you just can't jump into Revelation. It's foolish, and oftentimes people will grab a verse here or grab a verse there and they become experts on it. But you know, I'm going to recommend you go back, you watch episode 1 and work your way to this episode. You know, obviously you'll get something out of it, but to truly understand what we're talking about, you really need to go through it verse by verse, either with us or some other group or whatever, or do it by yourself. But God has laid it out perfect. With that being said, we spent many episodes talking about the beast and the harlot, and we're at this place where we're actually talking more into the war aspect of what this beast is capable of. So we're just going to pick it up where we left off, Revelation 17, starting verse 12. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. The 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So what we just read is we actually read two aspects of war. You know, when we talk about war in Revelation, most people don't really understand the wars. They understand that there will be wars and rumors of wars, but they don't know anything about what these wars are. And primarily because most people have a sense of escapism, where they're just going to be raptured up. So they don't need to worry about these wars because they're going to be kicking it in heaven in an armchair while everybody else is dealing with these wars. But the war aspect of this, because what we see is in 14, it said, these will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. And in 17 or 16 it says, and the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate, naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Which obviously has some aspect of war, because the 10 horns are 10 kingdoms. Now, when the harlot is being destroyed, the harlot is very not, it's not of God. So they're destroying corrupt, evil, harlotry, and then they're also warring with the Lamb. And this is a very confusing thing, because you'd think, well, the harlot would be with them. Like, of course, this would go very well for her. So it's very important that we kind of, before we get into this in better detail, which we'll spend many episodes, I mean, all of chapter 18 and a chunk of 19 are all dedicated to this, so we'll be on this for a long time. But it's important before we get into it to understand what these wars are, because ultimately what we're seeing is there are 3 wars in Revelation. And most people don't understand these 3 wars. They simply don't understand them. So we're going to talk about that specifically to address this war, this making war with the Lamb, as well as understanding as far as the timeline, well, where does all this fit? So when it comes to the wars, there's 3 wars. Now, I'm not talking about what Jesus said in Matthew 24, where he said there's wars and rumors of wars. These aren't rumors of wars. These are real wars. These are wars that have been referenced by most prophets in the Bible, and also referenced by Jesus Christ himself, as well as his disciples. But the first war is going to be the war over Jerusalem, and this is going to ultimately lead into the warring of the saints. It starts in Jerusalem and leads to the warring of the saints. But this war over Jerusalem, in Daniel 11:36, this starts with the abomination. It starts when the Antichrist declares himself to be God. According to Jesus in Matthew 24, run. Don't even pack. If you're on the roof, climb down, run. Don't go in your house, grab nothing. If you're in the field, run. This is a war of Jerusalem. It's an atrocity over Jerusalem specifically. And if you're a Jew, you're in trouble. You're in big, big trouble right then. According to Jesus, flee. According to Matthew 24. Now, Revelation 12:6 also says there's a place in the wilderness prepared for 3.5 years for them to flee to. And this is very significant because whatever this place is, it's going to be east of Jerusalem for sure, but the Bible says the earth will literally swallow anybody up that comes to try to get them. So it's clearly a safe place for 3.5 years, but what this is leading to is 144,000 Jews will begin prophesying and warring against the Antichrist and the beast system. Now this is going to immediately cause heavy persecution of Christians, and this is what begins this worldwide war of the war of the saints. And the war of the saints is spoken about, so when people say they're raptured up, well, who's supposed to fight in the war of the saints? Baby Christians who just became a Christian the day after you got raptured up? Of course not. Just like Jesus said in Matthew 24, don't trust my words, trust the words in red where he said at the end, right at the end is when they're coming. So you're going to have to be here for this war. Revelation 13:7, it says, and it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And you'll see this war in Joel, Amos, Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, Isaiah, John, Paul, and Jesus all talked about this war between the saints and the Antichrist and the beast system. It's 144,000 Jews and a multitude of nations, tribes, and tongues, according to Revelation 6:9-17, and Revelation 7:9-17. All talk about the Gentiles, the multitudes of nations, the saints that will war with the 144,000, the two witnesses against the beast and the Antichrist. It's something that a lot of people just, they don't know. They're aware of what tribulation is, that it's a persecution of the Christians, but they don't realize that this is actually a war. When a Christian becomes a criminal, most Christians are going to be pointing them out and turning them in for profit. But there's a remnant, there's a small percentage of them that are going to be like, you know what, this is not okay. We're going to stand up for the things of Jesus Christ. That is not God, and we're going to do something about you persecuting the Jews. This is where this war comes from. But this is only one war. This is a 3.5 year war. And it goes on and on and on. As we see in Revelation 6 and 7, of course, there's a multitude of dead saints coming, wondering, when is all this going to end? But if you look at this war specifically, and I'm just going to give you some, so get a pen, Revelation 13:7, Revelation 11, Revelation 12, Revelation 6:9-17, Revelation 7:9-17, Revelation 14, are just some small examples of the details of this war. But something that a lot of, this is just the one war. We're talking about there's 3 wars. This is just one. So a lot of people think that there's just this 3.5 years of this war, and then there's just all of a sudden God rains down, and then he shows up and just smites them all. That's not how this plays out. While this 3.5 year war is going on, according to Daniel 12:11 and 12, this will go on for 1,290 days, 3.5 years. But blessed be he who makes it to the 1,335th day, according to Daniel 12:12. So ultimately what you have is you have 3.5 years of the War of the Saints. And then you have an additional 45 days. So sometime during, and we did a timeline there. I'll try to put that link below for that video. I think it's like episode 37. It was a long time ago. But near the end is when all of a sudden the wrath of God starts raining down. This is when the darkness comes. This is when the stinging mosquitoes come. This is when the meteors are coming. But what also comes is when the Euphrates River completely dries up. It releases 4 angels, which are composed of 200 million angelic creatures who are going to kill 1/3 of all of mankind. Angels are very capable of killing humans. And they're very capable of taking human form to do it. Also, what we know is that the beast and the Antichrist is not going to be okay with this. So now what you have is you have a war with 200 million angels versus all of mankind. This is good news for the saints, first of all. When we show up, it's finally the heat's taken off of us, and it's put all on them. And this war continues until ultimately the entire world military systems of the world join together on the hill of Megiddo to finally put an end to this destruction by these 200 million angelic beasts. And that's the second war. And that ultimately leads to the third war, which is what we're talking about here in Revelation 17 verse 14. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. And this is a very different war. This is a war between the beasts and the world, and Jesus Christ and the saints. These are 3 totally different. Now they all lead from one to the next to the next to the next, because once you have ultimately Satan establishing his kingdom on earth as God, which causes the war on Jerusalem, which causes the war on the saints, which ultimately will lead to, when God shows up, it is as if the cavalry has arrived. And so when you see the angel Abaddon come out of the bottomless pit with his stinging mosquito-like creatures, and then you see these 4 angels who have been bound under the river Euphrates with their 200 million war-mongering angelic creatures. This is good news. This is good news because, again, it's like finally we're not getting killed. They're getting killed, not us. This is good news to us. And then this destruction continues to rain down in the form of disease, pestilence, more pain, darkness over the earth, and this will go on for an additional 45 days. And then Christ will ascend out of a cloud and glory, and he will set his feet on the Mount of Olives, and the world armies will come up against him, and he will utterly smite them in the valley of decision between Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives, otherwise known as Jehoshaphat's Valley. So there you go. I just wanted, before we get into kind of these wars, because what's brought up here in just the few short verses I read, there's 2 different wars we're talking about brought up here. So I just want to make very clear what these 3 wars are. You have the war of the saints. You have the war between the world and 200 million angelic creatures. And then you have the war between the beast and Jesus. So let's just pick it up where we left off again. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who receive no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as king with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. So those are us. We're the chosen and faithful. And he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitude, nations, and tongues, and the 10 horns which you saw on the beast. These will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So there you go. Hope this helped. Hope it didn't confuse the issue. just don't want to say, well, here's some fighting over there, and then there was this war and that. Like, we need to bring it all together and just make sense of these wars before we talk about the destruction and the consequences of these wars. So I hope this video helped. Any insider comments, put that below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support this channel to Patreon, that link is also below. The most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love God.